Chris kind of came up with this brainchild a couple years ago. I want to go to a conference. Yeah, but that's all the way across the country. It's 3 days, and you want to go for one 45-minute session. Can't really justify that cost to send you all that way, put you up in a hotel for a 45-minute session. So then we said, well, then we never get to go to conferences. So we said, well, screw it, let's invent one. So we did it about October in 2011. We had 80 people. We were just in the cove in the sound rooms down the hallway. And we had a lot of fun. So we said, let's do it again and see if we can get more people to come. So 4 times as many people came. And we sold out early. So thank you. It's been a lot of fun the last couple days. So after having gone to these sessions for the last 2 days, I feel like I'm kind of a downer at the end, but I'll try not to be. There are a lot of people in here, not as many as I was expecting, so thank you. I don't mind, because, so who am I? Turn my clicker on, clicky, clicky. I somehow exited out of my slideshow over here. Let's try this again. There you go, who am I? My name is Joel Larson. I'm the Institutional Advancement Reporting Manager for the University Advancement at the University of Washington. That's a mouthful. I love my title because it's so long. Actually, that is not true. In about 49.5 minutes, I am now a research consultant for the Center for Web and Data Sciences at the University of Washington, Tacoma. That's why I was getting teary, because when I accepted this position and looked at what my transition date was be, I said, oh crap, I'm throwing a conference at the end of February. I can't leave until I do that. So this presentation is my last official act as the Institutional Advancement Reporting Manager for the University of Washington, which I have been doing for the last 5+ years. I've actually been at the university for the last 9.5 years. I'm actually not leaving the university. I'm just going to a different part of the university where I will be taking all of the knowledge and stuff that I've gathered and shared and learned from all of you and applying it in a new spot. The Center for Web and Data Sciences, the University of Washington Tacoma, is taking advantage of the expertise that it has and making it available outside of the university to businesses in the South Puget Sound region and saying, you have a data problem, you don't have the expertise or the resources internal and you don't know where to find it, we'll do it for you. So that's where I'm going, and that's where I'll be. The nice thing is my email address isn't changing, so all the information that's in there is true. I will also be teaching. I currently teach at the Information School at the University of Washington. I teach database design and information retrieval. I will be continuing to do that at University of Washington Tacoma, except it's called Introduction to Information Management, although it's the same exact class. They just call it something different. So thank you for being here and seeing this many people. I have no reservations, so I'm going to tell you all our deep and dirty dark secrets about how we do institutional reporting. I'm going to do that using, this is my favorite tool. I call it the information continuum. You have data. You have all these little itty-bitty pieces of numbers and names and words and things that are stored structurally in a database. But it doesn't mean anything when it's just sitting there in your database. It's just data. Until you do something with it and turn it into information. Information begets knowledge. Knowledge begets wisdom. Excuse me, after lunch. And so I'm going to walk you through this. In the booklet, kind of back there in and amongst all the cool reports, right before the scouting reports from the Mariners, there is this page. Looks like that. It says report development. It's got a very old University of Washington logo on it that goes against everything I'm about to tell you over the next half an hour. But this was a document that we kind of put together because I was leaving. And we said, what do you do? You know, how do we do this? How do we tell the people who come after you what you do every day? And so that's kind of the basis of what I'm doing, and hopefully beyond these slides you have a little takeaway to take with you. So our goal in building reports for our fundraisers and our end users is to use the data we have to shape their understanding and to provide meaning to the people who are using our reports. We want our reports to be clear, we want them to be compelling, and we want them to be convincing. Our reports are designed to drive behavior. We just don't want them to go, oh, that's nice. We want them to act on it. And that behavior drives our design standard. So how do we do that? And once again, when I click on things on the computer. So how do we do that? The first thing we do, and you've probably heard this a half a dozen times over the last 2 days, is we assess our audience. We want to know our audience, who that report is for. Who are they? What are they looking for? What do we want them to look for? What is their point of view? What do they already know? All that stuff that it says there. What's the context? How much time do they have to really look at it and digest? And then we want to know what the motivation for engaging our audience is. Are we delivering a trend? Are we supporting an assumption? What are they using it for? So are they using it for planning? Are they using it for advocacy? Are they using it to tell a story? Are they reporting progress? These are all the different things that people use reports for. And so our goal, again, when we assess our audience, is to create a report purpose worthy of engaging the audience, driving them to action, causing them to do something. Okay, well now we know what we want them to do. When we know we want them to do something. So then the question is, well, can we? Can we do that? Do we have the information that they need? What are we working with? How many people were here in the last session with Patrick and reporting services and Power Pivot and all of that? So for those of you who were in that session, if somebody asked me for an international report on data based on what you saw in that, would I be able to provide a report? No, because what was our data? It was garbage. Our international address data is garbage. And we're working to fix that. So see, we're not perfect. We're not all that we tout ourselves to be, but we try. So do we have it? Is it good? And is it the right data? Are we giving them data that has context to what they're asking for the report on, or are we just saying, well, we have this data and it would look good and it would answer your question, but is it in the right context? I talked about, do we have, see this thing, I get off. The other thing that we say is, what can we toss out? And what's funny is, this is the problem with working on a presentation when you're grading midterms at the same time, is that then you start marking down your students on things that you're talking about in your presentation that you haven't talked to them about in class. And so a lot of students lost points for including columns in their answers that were unimportant or I didn't ask for in the question on the test. I was like, I didn't ask you for this, -2. But it wasn't impertinent. But that's exactly what I was going for. Don't give them information they didn't ask for. Now it's not, and this is the difference between what did they ask for and what is the spirit of what they asked for. There's a distinction. They may have asked for it, and you can be literal and say, this is what you asked for, so this is what I'm giving you. You could also say, this is what you asked for, but I understand what you're really asking for because I understand the context of your report and what you're going to use it. So this is the information that you need. And then there's, hey, look at all this other stuff I found out while working on that report. I'm going to slap it on there as well. No, draw a big X over that one. That one you put in your back pocket. So that you want your, so the goal of this stage in assessing your data is making sure that everything is ready to turn it into your report. So now, we've looked at our data, and we've looked at our purpose, and we've seen, okay, well, we have what we need. We have this pile of data, and we can turn it into information. Now we've got to do something with that information, and we take that information, and we're going to turn it into knowledge. We're going to turn it into something that they can actually use. So now we're going to look at how we present that data, whether it be in a static PDF, whether it be in an Excel, or whether it be in an interactive dynamic report that they can interact with. So how are we going to distribute it? Are we going to send it in an email? Probably not, because then that has a whole kind of security and confidentiality, because now you're releasing that data out there if it's not public data. Is it a one-off report or an ongoing report? And I'll tell you something. Ongoing reports, I try and get them beautiful and perfect and whatnot. A one-off report, I'll do fancy stuff. That's when you can do the swooping chart of a stadium that you're raising money for, and depending on how much money you've raised, the graphic looks like the stadium being built, and oh, here's 3/4 of the stands being built, and then the rest of it's grayed out because you haven't raised that money yet, but then you get the picture of the stadium. Versus if it's an ongoing report, then I'm going to do it time and time again. I'm going to do a bar chart or a line graph or something that is repeatable. Because, you know, to do that stadium chart, unless you're in Tableau and you've done some fancy stuff there, it's not really a repeatable graphic that you can do over and over and over again. Do we have a design that pleases the eye and stimulates the mind? And this is where it harkens back to the Mayo Clinic thing earlier. Are you going to give them data vomit, or are you going to give them something to look at? Sometimes you do. Just got to say, here's a spreadsheet. But is it, here's a spreadsheet, or here's a spreadsheet that I took 3 more seconds to click on Format as a Table, and pick the format that uses my brand colors and makes it look all pretty and banded rows, and you can actually read it. It's not data vomit where you're just getting a whole bunch of data, black and white data thrown on the screen in a grid. So the goal is effective information design. Your eye has a process, top to bottom, left to right. That's, at least in Western culture, how we're programmed to look at things. Top to bottom, left to right in a progression. And our visual, but here's the thing. Don't make it pretty if pretty doesn't serve a purpose. The visual design has to lead your report towards its goal and towards its intended purpose. So what I'm saying is, the least you owe your audience is the best you can do. So think about that. The least you owe your audience is the best that you can do. So, well, how can I give them more? That's the trick. That's the fun of that statement, is that, hey, I can do more. Now, granted, there's overhead and time and whatever, but did you do your best? I'm an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, and their chores, my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter has chosen that she likes to clean the big bathroom. I don't know why she likes the big bathroom. That's the one that we use. My son my son doesn't like to, but my son cleans the little bathroom. That's the one that he gets by default, because my daughter kicks him out of the big bathroom when she's cleaning it. And my wife and I have come to the realization that if they're doing it, it doesn't matter if there's spots on the faucet or if they missed a corner of the mirror when they were washing the mirror. If they did their best and they did their job and the bathroom is clean, then they gave us the best that they could do. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be the best you can do in the time constraints and the other constraints that you have. So now we've created, I'm going really fast. We'll be done early. Now how do you get beyond knowledge? So knowledge is, you've created a nice bar chart. You've created a very pleasantly presented grid of data that is easy to read, it's easy to discern, you can see the totals and all that good stuff. But now we're the data people, we're the report developers, and we're up to our eyeballs in this stuff every day. And we're seeing this data all the time. We're seeing one report, we're seeing another report. We have our standards of definitions so that when I tell this person over here they have 100 donors, and I tell this person over here that they have 250 donors, we're calculating those numbers exactly the same. When I tell this person that they've raised $100,000 and I tell this person that they've raised $50,000, it's because I'm calculating that number the same. And I can go back 5 years later and they can say, can you run this report for me again? And I save all my code. I usually put a job number or something on it, and then that's the name of the folder that I save the code in. And I go, sure, I can run that report for you again. Do you still have a copy of that old report? Yeah. They send it back to me, and in 6-point font down the lower left-hand corner is this little job number that I've hidden down there. They never seen it. They looked at that report 100 times in the last 5 years. They never noticed I had this little job number down the corner. They write to me, hey, you know, you wrote that report 5 years ago. Yeah, do you have a copy? I look at the little 6-point font down in the corner. I open up my code, I change a couple dates, I run it again, I send it back. Wow, that's amazing, that was so fast. How did you do that when you ran that report 5 years ago? I saved it. But the point I was trying to get to, got on a little tangent there, is we're in the data so much that we can start to anticipate the questions that they're going to ask. For example, I produce a monthly report every month. I've done it every month for the last 5 years, and it's usually taken me about 3 or 4 hours to do. And over the last 6 weeks, as I've been transitioning out of my job, I have completely rewritten the process to do that report. It's 48 of them, one for every unit and every subunit at the university, and have reduced it to a 45-minute process. It's like getting ready to sell your house, and you fix up everything that's been bothering you forever, and then you never get to take advantage of it. But, so this report that I produce every month, and I ran it in July, and I compared it to last year, and oh crap, we're already $20 million behind last year. Well, okay, August. We're already $20 million behind last year. And I knew that as soon as I clicked send on that email, that my phone was going to ring and say, why are we $20 million behind already and we're only 2 months into the fiscal year? So before I clicked send on that email, I took my finger away from the mouse and I minimized that screen and I went back into SQL query and I started pulling my data and said, oh, there was a 5-year, $60 million pledge that expired last year. Oh, and here's another one that expired last year. And they always had their payments come in right at the beginning of the fiscal year in July. Those pledges have ended. And so now all of a sudden, I'm behind. I click send, my phone rang. Why are we $20 million behind? I'm glad you asked. We had these 2 pledges. Do you want me to send you over this little Excel spreadsheet that shows you the information about those pledges, where it came from, what they're, sure. And it was already in the email, I had it saved, it was addressed, here's that information you wanted to know, and I click send again, and now I'm a hero. Now, was that their wisdom? No, that was my wisdom. That was me learning. But then what I start to do is, now when I send out an email, I'm anticipating those questions, and I can kind of put that in the body of the text if I'm sending it to a narrow audience, so that when Walt and Connie send it to the president of the university or to the directors of our foundation board, and they say, oh my gosh, why are we $20 million behind? They say, well, it's because we have these 2 pledges, because they don't have the access to, they may know that in the back of their mind, but they don't have the access to the data to do the database. I really want a deer stalker hat, because 50% of what I do is data detective work, where I'm digging down into the data to find out, why are we $20 million behind last year? Because you didn't raise as much. That's the answer I want to give, but they don't, they don't like that answer at all. They go, well, what did we raise last year that we didn't raise this year? And it's nice when it's one big number. Well, it's not nice when it's one big number. It's nice for me when it's one big number like that, because then it's easy to find. So what am I doing? I'm converting insight into understanding. Oh yeah, look, here's 2 numbers. I look at them. They're $20 million off. That sucks. But now, why? Like my kids. Why? Because I said so. Why? Because I don't like you. Why? Okay, I do like you. But so that's that knowledge of wisdom. Every report that you build should be a catalyst for change. Whether that's good change or bad change, you don't control that. You control the data that you get out of the database and how you make it look to give to somebody so that they can act. Maybe the right word here is a catalyst for action. It should be a catalyst for action. And I know I have some notes on this over here, so I got to walk back over here. I don't want to talk about that right now. I'll talk about that later. So how do we do that? How can we take static reports that are just grids and charts and turn them into something that gives them actionable items to do? This, and I know it's hard to read because there's a lot of information on there, but you can come up and look at this, or I can email it to you, and I don't feel any sadness at all because our donors here are Hugh Dubb, Dr. Harry Husky, Lois Lane, Captain America, Aunt Beru. So it's a nice, clean, scrubbed model for you. But what we've done is, boop, boop, boop. Rear projection doesn't show up with a laser pointer. It eats my laser. So this is a typical pyramid. This is a prospect pyramid. So we take the prospect rating and we give you a count of how, this is the prospect rating on this side. This number over here represents the lower value of the program rating multiplied by 1/4 of the number of prospects at that level. So that's what this number is over here. It's not like an ask amount or anything like that. It's a calculated value. But what can happen is you can click on this level of the pyramid, and it tells you who's in that level of the pyramid. And then they can click on this level of the pyramid, and this refreshes and shows you that level of the pyramid. And you can say download this as an Excel file. Really cool, huh? All right, no, even cooler. Convert this to a purple people report. That's a term that we use. What's a purple people? So now we take all those prospects, all that prospect information, and we grid it. Again, here's your affinity, your campaign rating, and then here's what stage you're in. So do you have no affinity to a unit, but we've given you a prospect rating? We've identified that you have a capacity to give. We just don't know where it's going yet. Are you in the discovery stage? Are you in the awareness stage, the interest stage, or the investment stage? So purple people are the people who are at $5 million or more in the awareness stage or higher. And then if you get into the $10 million or more in the interest and investment, then you become a gold person. And this is your action. These are the people that are ready to give. So now it's a report that drives them to action. And when they're done here, they can pick these people and they can go back to the prospect pyramid. But now it's not just a piece of paper with some information on it. We drive them to action. So that's kind of my information continuum in 20 minutes. But I have more. But wait, there's more. So how do you do your reports? So, as I said, I have a monthly report that I call the ROC. It's the Report of Contributions. We call it the ROC because it's our main report, but it's spelled R-O-C. You see, cutesy things. We love bad acronyms. We have a product called Hydra. Sounds cool, doesn't it? You want to know what Hydra stands for? Have your data reach advance. The acronym has to be cooler than the name of the product. Then you can talk about things and sound really cool. So I do this monthly report that gets shared to many different audiences. Administrative assistants, fundraisers, deans, board of regents, the rest of the world. I work for a public university. Anybody can ask for any of my reports. But I share ones at conference. I don't like to share them if I don't have to. You have to ask me for them. This report gets posted on the website if you know where to look for it. It's on the Board of Regents. You open the Board of Regents report, and it's usually about page 40 to 50 in their report. But it's there if you know where to look for it. There is a ton of information to digest in this report. Prior to 2008, this is the last year I did the report in this format. This report, do you remember this report, Mike? How many pages was this report in 2008? Do you remember? 40 pages. Monthly report was 40 pages. Do you know how many pages it is now? 9. 9 pages. Why? This page, this was a typical page in 2008. And this is actually a nice one because I wanted to show you this page. This shows gifts and grants for the last 10 fiscal years. In this case, this is a campaign. That was a $2 billion campaign. And it shows a 10-year history of the gifts and grants. And then there was another page, page 11, that showed you complete fiscal year. Same information. And then you turn the page, and it said year-to-date donors as a bar chart. And then you turn the page, and it showed you complete fiscal year donor numbers as a bar chart. 4 pages, reduced to 1. This is where Edward Tufte comes into hand. He may have a big personality, but he has some great ideas. And some of his ideas is that the eye takes in more information than you realize, and our brain is capable, our brain is capable of processing 30 million pieces of information every second or something like that. You can open up the newspaper to the box scores, and I think there's something like 15,000 points of data on like a baseball box score page in the newspaper, and you can process that information in about 10 to 15 minutes. You can give your users a lot of information in one space. This information is all related to itself. Prior to this page, you had to flip back and forth between 4 different pages to look at trends and look at analysis and look at how things compare to one another. So this is, and if I was sticking around, I would probably flip these over next year. This is current year to date, and current year to date, how it has looked over the last 10 years. It stays to the last 10 years, so next year this row plops off and it moves over. And this is complete fiscal year. So this bar is always short, except for this graph really doesn't mean anything until you get to like May, June, April, May, June. Because you want to see, oh, it's getting closer, it's getting closer. Are we going to get taller or not? But it at least shows you, okay, well, we're a little bit ahead of where we were last year, at least with private gifts. We're a little bit behind on grants, but I told you why. Because we had 2 that expired. This is real. It's a public document, so I don't mind sharing it. But then last fiscal year, where did we end up? So you can do a little bit of forecasting by looking at that. Now, I don't do forecasting for them. I make them put 2 and 2 together. We look at our donor numbers. Oh, we're a little down when we were a little down, so we're kind of on trend. And then they can look at the actual data that builds these these graphs underneath it. There's some other things that I did. I really minimized the flotsam and jetsam, the extra stuff on the page. Here's a nice big campaign-themed marketing banner down here. Here's the name of the report. Here's a title. Here's a whole bunch of footnotes. So that's this big here compared to that big there. On this particular page, I didn't need the extra room, but I can't tell you how many times I've kind of floated on the wall at a foundation board meeting and seen this get filled in with notes and questions. Some other things I did to this report that add credibility and accountability to the report. I've added a date range. When you distribute these types of reports that have a huge, broad audience, and then you have a column that says fiscal year to date, well, when you hand it out to a foundation board, you have people that might work at 4 or 5 different companies, and their fiscal years could start in January, they could start in March, they could start in July, they could start in October. This says our fiscal year starts July 1. It lets them know, it gives them context. This page doesn't have any footnotes on it, but if I have questions, for example, in this report, there's a page, when you break it down into a unit, when you're looking at College of Arts and Science or something, there's a page that says how many alumni have given to Arts and Science. That is all alumni of the University of Washington that have given to Arts and Science. There's another page that says how many alumni of Arts and Science have given to the UW. And then there's another column on that same page is how many alumni of Arts and Sciences have given to Arts and Sciences. And I constantly get asked the question, why aren't these numbers the same? And it's like, well, because your alumni don't just give to you. Nor do other people's alumni just give to their units. So, on those, not on this page, on those particular pages, where that alumni total is, there's a little footnote mark, and then down here it says this number represents all alumni of the university that have given to your unit. And then on the alumni participation page it says this number represents all of the alumni of your unit that have given anywhere to the university, including your unit. And then this number represents all the alumni of your unit that have given to your unit. But I put that as a footnote because before I put the footnote there, I would get 2 or 3 phone calls every month. Why are these numbers not the same? I put the footnote in, no more phone calls. Footnotes are useful. They're a pain when you're designing a repeating report, but I don't make them show up if there's a number there and not show up if there's not a number there. You get the footnote regardless. So what else have I done? Make sure I covered everything I wanted to talk about there. Oh, branding. I went up to our marketing department because we share the same space. It's kind of our integrated advancement. We also have integrated marketing. And I said, you know, when I did this, I went up and they have like all their stuff. They have like a little display rack. takes up a whole big, long hallway. And I said, this one's pretty, this one's pretty, this one's pretty, this one's pretty. And I went back down to my desk, and I flipped through it, because I asked them do you guys have a style guide? And they said, what? And I said, okay, well, let me go see. So then I grabbed all the ones that I thought were pretty, kind of came up with my own style guide, made my report, went back and said, what do you think? When I first went back and said, what do you think? I was still using this purple and this gold. And they said, that's not our purple and gold. I said, aha, you do have a style guide. And now I have, and I left it behind, although I kind of wish I brought it with me. I have a grid of all of the colors that marketing likes to use, labeled in the order they like to use them. So if this was a 3-color stacked chart, I know what the 3rd color to use is, and I know what the 4th color to use is, in the order that if I pick up any of those marketing materials, what colors they use. Now there is a difference in this purple. This is like more Crown Royale purple, and this is more grape. Might be hard to see here, but this is a much deeper, darker purple. It's very important. We don't want to look like grapes. It's also easier to buy clothes in this color than that color. All right. The other thing that we've done, so this was taking a report that we already produced, looked nice, it was pretty, but there were problems with it. It was a 40-page report. I reduced it down to 10. So then we did a survey. We used Survey Gizmo to send a survey to all of our active alumni that have, or all of our alumni that have active email addresses, and that was about 203,000 people. We got about an 8% response rate. We got 17,000 responses on that. I talked about that in our integrated advancement. Survey Gizmo has a ton of tools for reporting, for output, and things like that. This is what it looks like. To get to, this is the first question on the survey that the person saw when they took the survey. Are you Joel Larson? This is on page 3 of the Survey Gizmo report. And then this is the output for all of the various questions. They wanted to load these into Advance so that somebody could see, oh, this person responded to the survey. I want to see their responses. They would have to scroll through the first 3 pages just to get to the stuff they wanted. And then somewhere about page 4 or 5 of this PDF, there's like 3 pages of stuff that we didn't want, that was for us. It's like making sure the address was correct, making sure the employment information was correct, stuff like that. We didn't want the frontline fundraisers to see that. They didn't. That was, what can you toss out? And we turned it into this. So essentially, what they see is as if we handed the alumni a paper survey. What did they fill out? And it's very easy to read. There's check boxes. Now, what did I have to do? Was this a painful process? Painful would be nice. I would rather have my skull chopped off and be conscious and have somebody poke me with a low voltage cattle prod and have my brain mapped for 6.5 hours than do this again. But was it worth it? Yes. Now, what did I do this in? Anybody want to guess? I'll give you a clue. It's not fancy. I did it in Access. Now, all my data is in SQL Server, though. So I had to pull data down, and I had to do a lot of data cleaning, because the way that Survey Gizmo gives you your data when you download it is when you have a checkbox answer like this, does it say 1s and 0s? No. They put the full text of what the checkbox is in the column. So I had to go and turn those all into 1s and 0s, or write really bad if-only statements in Access to convert them to 1 to 0s. I tried that first. There are 114 data points in this survey. Writing 114 if-only statements in Access really makes you cry. I believe there was much fermented libations consumed during those first couple weeks of working on this survey. So again, we were during our 150th anniversary, so what did I do? I used our 150th anniversary logo. I used our font. I used our colors. I used our style. Notice my headers and footers, they're flipped. But again, that minimalistic. I used that branding. It's consistent to my other reports. Granted, as I said, I flipped the header and footer. I put the logo at the top and the title at the bottom. But now my reports are consistent. So when people are getting reports from me, they know they're from me because I take the time to make my reports look the same. That's why I said that handout in the book is completely against everything I'm going to talk about, because I didn't do that one. I helped get the content together, but then they sent the content off to somebody else to make it, and they went out to the internet and said, I like this UW logo, and downloaded it, and I went, ah! Patch and band! Because that's what I do. Consistency adds credibility and accountability to your reports. So does putting your name on it. Well, for me anyway. Even if that just says source, University of Washington Advancement Reporting, then when I design a report, regardless of who I'm giving it to, I assume it's going to find its way to the very highest levels of the university. Regardless of if it's an administrative assistant in the libraries to Connie Kravis, I design my reports exactly the same. I take a sense of ownership and I take a sense of pride in what I give because I assume that that person is going to share it, and that person's going to share it, and that person's going to share it. And if it makes it all the way to the president, I want him to be proud of that data that he's seeing too. And Chris and I call that passing the presidential sniff test. And whenever I design a new report, and I share it with Chris, because when you're designing reports like this and you're staring at them for so long, you miss mistakes. You just can't see them anymore. This will be indented, and all the rest of them won't. Or the second line will be indented, but all the rest of them won't. And Chris will go, why is this indented? I don't know. I've stared at that for the last 50 hours. I don't even see it anymore. So Chris and I always ask each other the question, does this pass the presidential sniff test? And I usually go, no. And he goes, go take a break, go work on something else, and then come back with fresh eyes. All right, so now we have individual results. So now people, we want aggregate results. We want to see, what do these surveys tell us? So again, Survey Gizmo, all kinds of cool tools. This is what it looks like. Now I'll ask you, does this pass the presidential sniff test? Would you be proud giving this to the chairman of the board of your organization? No. Is the information correct? Yeah. Is the information useful? Yeah. Do you feel proud handing this off to somebody in your organization? No. Not that it's bad. It's a great report. I used it a lot. I was like, oh, this is a good thing to include. So what did I do? I created my own version. I have all the data now. I've data cleansed it all. So now I said, what can we tell? What are people going to want to know? So the other thing that was cool, when we did this report, if we had a donor ID number or a database ID number, we included it. This was not an anonymous survey. This was a non-anonymous survey because we wanted to check to make sure we had their name right, their spouse right, their employer right, their address right, yada, 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 yada. So I was able to join it back to Advance. And then I was able to do what we call affiniation. That's because you have people who have affinity. They have a direct relationship because they graduated from a unit. And they have affiliation because they've had some kind of interaction with the unit. Maybe they went to an event or they gave a donation. And so then we take those two populations of people, we put them all into one table, and we call it the affiniation table. And we love making up words. Let's see, what are some of the other ones we've used this week? Headroom for innovation, interdigitation. Help me, Andrew. What else have we got? I'm putting you on the spot. Affiniation. I love affiniation. So then I went back and I compared everybody who submitted a survey to the affiniation table and was able to generate 271 different versions of this report. If you were an academic unit on campus and we were able to attach a survey response to you, you got one of these. Some of them had a 1 in that space, but I created it anyway because it was easier to say, well, if it, then yeah, it was just easier. But then we said, bar charts are boring. This isn't a reoccurring report. It's a static data set that we only ever have to produce once. So how can we make it cool? Because what would this, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 12 data points in this question. Do you know what a 12 data point bar chart with 2 bars next to it look like on this page? Because then you had all these long diagonal labels down here, and I won't even go into that. So then we said, how can we make it cool? The butterfly chart. Is butterfly chart an access? No. Was this a painful part to make this graphic work? Yes. Was it worth it? Yes. As soon as I published this report, emails and phone calls. I love how you presented the data. I can see that this is the college of the environment. Oh, it's the wrong page. Their numbers are pretty consistent. They're pretty close. But there were some units where it would be like, who was it? Social sciences. So the purple is all university-wide. Everybody who took the survey, this is how their data broke down. So you had this 50% of people said that in addition to attending, they've come to classes, they've come to campus to go to a Husky sports event. School of Social Science, it was like 10%. And they were able to see that right away. And then we had a whole bunch of things where it was like comparing 2 pie charts. Have you ever tried to compare 2 pie charts on a report? You try and stack them. You try and do a donut. And they're just not comparable because they shift and they move. And well, this piece is bigger, so it pushes this piece. And I lost my USB key. It's been in my pocket all day, and I would have shown you the next page of this report. But rather than doing stacked a bunch of bar charts, what we did was we put all our pie charts. We put all the wedges of the pie chart kind of in the middle, kind of like a butterfly report. But then the size of the slice depended the size of the number that we put next to it. So if there was a big slice, the number came up nice and big and bold. And if it was a little tiny slice, it was like small font and normal weight. But you looked at that and you're like, oh, look, there's a big bold number over here and a little tiny number over here. People love that. I don't know why. It wasn't even graphical. It was text. But it was like a pie butterfly. And they added up to 100% at the bottom. So what's my takeaway? Sometimes the effort of the data person is very painful. But this drove action. We're still dealing with tackling problems tackling questions that people had from this report. I want to see, how do I do this? We asked questions about, did they prefer to be put on a donor wall and get a thank you note? Did they, God, I can't remember some of the other questions, considering how long I worked on this survey. But people carry this around with them. I've gone to meetings, and I did this last April, and I've gone into meetings, and people have pulled this out and said, I have a question for you. I've been meaning to ask you for months, but I've just never seen you. I don't know if you've been following on Twitter. Jen McCormick said, hey, if you want to see an example of a butterfly chart, I have one. This is what she'll show you. She's going to show you this. And then I tweeted back, hey, I'm going to show the butterfly chart in my thing. Sweet, go to Joel's thing. There it is. There's our butterfly chart right there. You want to know how I did this? It's a stacked bar chart where I made this invisible. So there's an other and the rest. Other and not other. And not other is 85%, and I made it no line, no fill. So this is, and then I made labels and I covered them up. Because this is actually 0 to 100. 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. I made labels and access, and I covered them up so that the numbers went in the opposite direction. Tricky, tricky. Good thing I'm quitting in 5 minutes. I've released my secrets. Yeah, questions?
On that report, it shows the sample rates. So if you had 17,000 respond out of 200,000, you got about 5% rate return.
8%.
So determining things off of 5% of respondents, if people looking at the report and saying, well, taking from 5%, what does this mean? I mean, because
I did. The other thing that I also caveated when I gave this report to people was keep in mind that this survey was conducted in the context of your relationship to the entire university. Because if they sent this targeted saying, when was the last time you came to the College of the Environment? Or how would you like the College of the Environment to interact with you? I think the response rates would be different for different schools. And I also think the answers would be a little different. This was sent out in the context of your relationship to the University of Washington. So that, yeah, there are those caveats. We were very happy with an 8% response rate. I think we had a little bit higher click-through rate. I think it was about a 10 or 11% click-through rate on it. But it's better than nothing. It's something to go on.
Yeah.
So
Just wondering on the report itself.
nobody complained. Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody complained.
So the sample rate.
Yeah, I'd like to see more. But it gives us something to go on. Gives us a starting point or a benchmark. Any other questions? What am I going until 3, June? Is that what time I have? Till 3. Okay, so I got time for questions. And I'll go back. I would have shown you more, but as I said, I could hop on the internet and download a full report if you actually want to see all of the rest of the survey report, or if you want to see the rest of a report of contributions or something. I'm happy to go up and grab one. Yeah.
You said you used Access. What other reporting tools did you use?
SQL Server.
SQL Server.
So what I use Access as my crystal reports. And basically what I do is I write stored procedures on SQL Server, and then in Access I create pass-through queries where I just execute the stored procedure. And then we've actually, in our self-service tool, we've written a back-end exe that we use as a reference in Access that will pass in, from the website, it'll pass in a job ID, which then that parameter gets passed to the stored procedure, and then the stored procedure looks at a job criteria table in the SQL Server, and then that gives it all of its parameters. So that tells it that, so then for that report, I say I want to run one for the college of the environment, and so then it runs the stored procedure filtered for the college of the environment. So that's how I did it. Is I do all my data processing on SQL, I hand it off to Access, and then I use Access to do my formatting. That's proprietary. Yeah, we built it. And it's a matching tool. Mike Vasai would be the person to talk about Hydra. Yeah.
How do you get your reports from Access to your consumer?
Okay. So remember how I said we wrote an exe file that passes the job criteria to Access? So then at the end of this, what this does is it creates a PDF file. And then when that PDF file gets created, and then what it does is it basically instantiates Access. It opens up a version of Access on a middle layer report processing server. And then it says, I want to print this report. So then the report looks at the stored procedure calls the code comes back, fills it in, prints it to a PDF, and then that PDF sits in a file on our server and gets uploaded back to the database. And then when that report's done running, this is part of our self-service tool, when that report's done running, they get an email that says your report's ready. It takes about, well, these are one-off, so they just download them. But usually in our self-service reporting tool, we try and write them to finish in less than a minute. And then they get an email that says your report's done, they go back and there's a link. And we can give it to them. I could give them, I chose not to do this because we did it as a one-off, but I could have, when I set this up, had it create a PDF and an Excel spreadsheet of who these 8,665 people are. Because that's the question I got, who are those people? But I didn't go that far. That was within the time frame that I had. So we have a self-service tool, passes to Access, Access creates the PDF gets loaded back up to the database, and then it creates a link on our website. Other questions? Yeah.
Have you had any open dialogue to negotiate the time to do this kind of work? I mean, with your department? Or?
The nice thing about being a university, for the most part, we don't have deadlines. For the most part. I work in academia. Walt encourages work-life balance. Give me your best 40 hours during a week, and then go home. Does that mean I work 40 hours every week? No. Most weeks do I work 40 hours? Yeah. Do I work 32 some weeks? Yeah. Do I work 60 some weeks? Yeah. But that's when I get really close to having this done, and I refuse to go home because I'm so close, and I only have one more thing to get to work. And then it's 11 o'clock at night. And it doesn't work. And then I go, damn it. And I get out of my chair and I walk out the door and I go, that's how I fix it. And then I have to remember to do it the next morning. So I go home and get in the shower and I write it on the wall. I do my best thinking in the shower. Any other questions? We got 4 more minutes. Do you guys want to see what the rest of this looks like? You want to see what that butterfly pie chart looks like? Okay. That means you also get to see our self-service reporting tool. Unless I do it here and then throw it up the... Okay. Oh, because I got to go here. No. No, don't load that. Load this. Stop. Good. This is our internet site. It's really not an internet site. It's a department site. It's public. You can go look at it. If you try to hit anything that you're not allowed to see, it'll ask you for a password, so you don't get to see it. Our self-service reporting tool is called reportwriter.net. This will not be a reportwriter.net demonstration. Don't tell anybody my password. I don't want to change it, although they'll probably make me change it, even though I still work for the same company. So, because this is a website and all of our information is there, I can't leave that sit too long, we have three-level authentication, because now you have access to our data, and you have access to our information. Contact reports, everything else is available in this tool. Three-level authentication, pen-tested, Kirk Bailey-ified. Because how do you put a price on data loss of an advancement database? It's probably your second biggest asset after the name of your organization is your donor database. You can't put a value on that. I did actuarial work in my master's program, and 5 years ago it cost about $425 per entity that you lose in a data loss to remediate that data loss. Don't lose your data. It gets expensive. Okay, so what do we want? We want the alumni survey, correct? Built in-house 10 years ago in classic ASP, is now very Frankenstein with .NET, C#, everything else. We're actually in the process, we've gotten through wireframing, a new design, and a lot of web services that we're going to build into it, and we're doing a complete, well, maybe they won't now that I'm leaving. We were going to do a complete system architecture review and a complete data review, but I'm hoping that they still do that. A lot of it is built off of extract tables. I'm trying to go really fast here. Okay, so using our taxonomy, we create a list. So we built a taxonomy of every single unit, department, whatever in our university. If you had a PDF associated with it, it turned into a link. If you didn't get a link. So let's show you that College of the Environment. So here's College of the Environment. They also have a whole bunch of subdivisions, and within those subdivisions, they also have departments. As I said, I went as deep as I could. If you had an affiliation to that unit, I created a report for you. But here's the one that we were looking at. So here it is. We already looked at this page. Let's go. So here's that butterfly chart. How do you compare pie charts? This took us a week to figure out. So, and it was actually a range. It's like if you were 0 to 20%, you were like 8-point font, not bold. And then if you're like 25 to 50%, you were 24-point font. If you're 50 to 75%, you were 24-point font, bold. And if you're over 75%, you were 28-point font, bold, and italicized. But what you're comparing is no response to have not been at the UW. And so it kind of gave, and in some of them, as you can see here, there were some bigger slices, and here there wasn't. It's more, they're College of Environment folks, most of them have either been a few times a year or once or twice every few years. So that was our way of comparing pie charts.
Would it not be easier just to do sort of a multiplier and turn that into an integer value and then make that a font size cap, top to bottom?
Yeah, I tried that. What ended up happening was it started screwing with my spacing. And I wanted to maintain certain space. That's what I did at first. And then what I had to do was I said, okay, I want it to be this tall, and I had to find a way to keep it within that size. But that is what I did first. Another butterfly chart. What else do we have here? Mostly butterfly charts, but here's some of the other questions we asked. How important are each of the following considerations? Giving is a way to express my loyalty. UW repairs. We just had a bunch of phrases that we kind of threw at them, and they ranked them. What else did we ask them? Supporting, oh, that's more of those. There's 2 pages of these. Then we asked them, how do you like to be recognized? I like a thank you gift. I like to meet people. Notice people don't like to meet faculty or students. They just want to give their money and run away. Look, 54% of our respondents said, I don't care. I don't want to meet anybody. Do your work. This is static. And that's one of the things that we've been dealing with. we've actually been playing with loading this data into Michelangelo. But Michelangelo doesn't do affiliation. It does alumni, and it does donors. And so, in trying to get that affiliation, it doesn't do an or, it does an and. And so that's the struggle we've had, is how do we make that affiliation work in Michelangelo. We're close. We don't quite have it then. But then you can go into how many of you saw Michelangelo? We've mentioned it 1,000 times. It's a filtering tool that we have. You can load your data in, and it's called Michelangelo because you throw everything in there, and then you set up a bunch of filters, and you whittle away what you don't want so that you get the David statue. You whittle away because what you really want is in that block of stone. That's why it's called Michelangelo. Don't tell Chris I told you. But basically, we just used these butterfly reports, and it was really easy and quick to digest and flip through, and it drove action. People responded to this report. People did things. They went, whoa, people don't like meeting students and faculty. We're going to stop having all these lunches and only 3 people show up to. The reason why, it's not because we're not marketing them well. It's because they don't want to come. That's what the survey told us. Did I know that? No. But I just took the data and tried to present it in a way that was a catalyst for action. We are well over time. You got 15 minutes until the final closing session. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming to Drive.